A 155-pound Presa Canario spent 3 years chained to a cinder block in a backyard in rural Georgia. No shelter, no shade. When animal control finally cut the chain, the links had rusted into his skin, and the vet needed 40 minutes to remove them. 5 months after a family took him in, that same dog did something at 2:41 a.m. that made a paramedic say, on record, another 30 minutes and you'd be planning a funeral. But here's the part that doesn't make sense. The dog shouldn't have known. No one knew. Not the parents, not the pediatrician. No one. His name was Casso. 155 pounds of brindle and scar tissue. His head was the shape of an anvil, wide, flat, with a jaw that looked like it could dent a car door. His ears had been cropped short and uneven, probably with scissors, and one stood higher than the other, which gave him a permanent look of suspicion. When he walked, his nails clicked on hard ground like someone tapping a wrench against a pipe. His breathing was loud, a wet, heavy pull through a nose that had been broken at least once. If you touched his coat, it was rough and warm, like the hood of a truck sitting in the sun. Underneath, his skin was a patchwork of pale scars, where the chain had dug grooves into his neck, and a long raised line across his left shoulder, where something sharp had caught him. The animal control report was 4 pages. A 6-foot chain bolted to a cinder block in a foreclosed backyard outside Macon. No doghouse. A plastic bowl that collected more rainwater than food. Neighbors heard him at night, not barking, just a low grinding sound, teeth on metal, chewing the chain, for 3 years. Though, when the team arrived, Casso was lying flat on the dirt with the chain pulled taut, facing the fence. He didn't look up. His tail was pressed flat against his back legs. Not tucked, just flat, like it had forgotten what it was for. The vet said his cortisol levels were the highest she'd seen in a domestic dog. His back molars were nubs. They brought him to a county rescue in Atlanta. 9 weeks, 2 online posts. One comment said, "Beautiful boy." Another said, "That breed should be banned." Then nothing. Marco and Elena Ferreira had moved from Sao Paulo to a 2-bedroom apartment in Providence, Rhode Island, 14 months earlier. Marco ran a milling machine at a tooling company, 10-hour shifts. Elena was waiting on her work permit. Now alone with their 4-month-old son, Mateus, in an apartment with thin walls and a kitchen window that faced a brick wall. Back home, Elena used to play foro while she cooked and danced with the dish towel. In Providence, the radio stayed off. The dish towel stayed on the hook. Marco's co-worker Davi volunteered at the Atlanta rescue on weekends. He showed Marco the post. "He just sits there, brother, doesn't move, doesn't make a sound. He reminds me of how you look at lunch break." Marco didn't laugh, but he drove down the next Saturday. He told Elena he was going to look at a beagle, 32 dogs, labs wagging, pit mixes jumping, a collie spinning. Last kennel on the left, Casso was lying on his side with his back to the gate. The fluorescent light above him had burned out. It smelled like wet concrete and old rust. That's when Marco crouched down. Casso's ear, the taller one, rotated backward like a radar dish finding a signal. Then he rolled onto his belly, turned his head, and pushed his nose through the gap at the bottom of the gate until the tip touched Marco's knuckle. Cold and dry. One exhale, long and slow, like something he'd been holding for a very long time. Marco called Elena from the parking lot. "It's not a beagle, 155 pounds. 12 seconds of silence. "Bring him home." The rescue volunteer, Grace, said Casso had never touched the front of his kennel for anyone. He just gave up. Until you. The first week, Casso destroyed the apartment. Ate the corner of the couch. Not chewed, swallowed the foam. Knocked over the stroller, scratched a groove into the bathroom door. His tail swept a mug, a cutting board, and Elena's phone off the counter. The screen cracked in 2 places. But with Mateus, Casso moved like a different creature. He walked into the nursery corner, a second-hand crib and a mobile Elena had made from paper birds, and lay down 6 inches from the bars. His breathing slowed until it matched the baby's. In, out, like a metronome that had learned another metronome's rhythm. Then things got strange. End of week 2, every time Mateus ate, formula, mashed banana, anything, Casso would get up, walk over, and press his nose against the baby's mouth. Not licking, pressing, nostrils flaring, then the bottle, then the bib, then the mouth again. Elena pushed him away. He came back. She pushed again. He came back. Always the mouth. "He's obsessed with the baby's food," Elena told Marco. "It's starting to scare me." Marco watched. They say Casso sniffed Mateus's lips after every meal. Between meals, he ignored the baby's face entirely. Only after food. Only the mouth. 14 times in one day. Maybe he's hungry, Marco said. His bowl is full. He barely eats. Their landlord knocked on the door that same week. Mr. Kovac, 71, had owned the building 30 years. He'd seen Casso in the hallway. That is a Presa Canario. My insurance does not cover that breed. 16 tenants, families, children. His voice wasn't angry. It was flat, like reading a verdict. You have 30 days. Elena stood by the stove after Kovac left. Marco sat at the table. She said, in Portuguese, he smells something on the baby. I don't know what, but he smells something. You want to keep a 155-pound dog we can't afford in an apartment we might lose. Because of a feeling. Because of his nose, Elena said. Watch him tomorrow. A dog like Casso doesn't usually get this far into a story. If you want to find out what he was smelling, subscribe. Because what happened at 2:41 a.m. changed everything. And it almost didn't happen in time. Month 5. A Tuesday in March. Elena had started giving Mateus small amounts of scrambled egg. The pediatrician said 9 months was fine. Mateus ate egg Monday with no problem. Tuesday evening, a spoonful. At 6:15 p.m., normal. Bath at 7 o'clock. Bed by 7:30. 2:41 a.m. The apartment was dark. Marco was asleep. Elena was asleep. Casso was on the floor next to the crib, eyes open. He stood up, pressed his nose through the bars, held it against Mateus's face, pulled back, pressed again. Nostrils flared wide. Then he did something he'd never done. He barked. It's not a single controlled bark, a rapid, desperate series. 3, then 4. Then he put his paws on the crib rail and pushed his entire head through the bars and would not move. Elena was in the room in 4 seconds. She flipped the light. Mateus was awake. His face was swollen, lips, eyelids puffed outward like they'd been inflated. Red blotches across his cheeks and neck. Each breath a high, thin whistle, like wind through a cracked window. His tiny fingers clawing at his own throat. Marco grabbed the keys. Elena grabbed Mateus. Rhode Island Hospital in 9 minutes. Anaphylaxis. Delayed onset egg allergy. Doesn't show on the first exposure, triggers on the second. Mateus's throat was closing. Oxygen at 79%, the paramedic said. Another 30 minutes, and this would have been a different conversation. Epinephrine. Stabilized in 40 minutes, kept overnight. But the allergist ran a full panel the next morning. Egg whites, positive. Peanuts, positive. Tree nuts, positive. Shellfish, positive. Mateus had a rare multi-allergen hypersensitivity. The egg was the first trigger. Any of the others could have been fatal. You would have found out about peanuts at a birthday party, the allergist said, or tree nuts in a granola bar at daycare, and you might not have been 9 minutes from a hospital. Marco was standing in the hallway, back against the wall, hands in his pockets, jaw working like he was chewing something he couldn't swallow. Elena came out carrying Mateus asleep against her shoulder, a tiny hospital band around his wrist. She stood next to Marco and started singing, quiet, almost under her breath. Imre for a melody her grandmother used to hum. She hadn't sung in 15 months. Marco took one hand out of his pocket and placed it flat against Mateus's back, over Elena's hand. They stood there at 8:14 in the morning, not moving. 3 days later, Elena said one sentence in the dark. The dog was smelling the reaction before the reaction happened. Every feeding, every time, the mouth. Casso had been detecting protein traces on Mateus's lips. Allergens the human nose couldn't register, but 300 million olfactory receptors could. He didn't know the word allergy. He just knew something was wrong, and he kept coming back because no one was listening. Today, Casso is 6 years old, 158 pounds. Mateus is 4. He calls Casso Caco because he can't say the S yet. Every morning at 6:20, Casso sits 4 feet from the high chair. After every meal, he sniffs Mateus's mouth once. Just once now, a quick check, a habit he'll never break. The family carries 2 EpiPens everywhere. Mateus wears a medical ID bracelet with 6 allergens listed on the back. He has never had a second reaction. Mr. Kovac never filed the 30-day notice. Elena showed him the allergy panel and the ER papers. He sat at his kitchen table for a long time, looking through his reading glasses. Then he said, "My wife was allergic to bees. I carried her EpiPen for 41 years. The dog stays." That weekend, he left a marrow bone and a bag of grain-free kibble outside their door without knocking. Marco doesn't set an alarm anymore. Every morning at 5:50, Casso presses his cold nose against Marco's hand and exhales once. Marco gets up, makes coffee. Or Elena joins him at 6:10. Some mornings, the radio is on. Some mornings, she hums. On the intake form from the rescue, the field for reason for surrender was blank. Casso was a seizure case, not a surrender. But in the margin, someone had written in pencil, "Dog was facing the fence when found, facing out, still waiting." Would you have walked past kennel 32, or would you have crouched down? Tell me in the comments.